The fourth, we believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Louisiana has become the first state to require the Ten Commandments be displayed in public classrooms, from kindergarten to publicly funded universities.
If you want to respect the rule of law, you got to start from the original lawgiver, which was Moses.
Governor Jeff Landry signing the bill, which requires a poster-sized display or framed document of the Ten Commandments to be installed by January. Landry says the law isn't just for religious reasons, but also for, quote, common cultural heritage.
I hope and I pray that Louisiana is the first state to allow moral code to be placed back in the classrooms.
Critics argue the law violates the separation of church and state.
We learned the Ten Commandments. We went to Sunday school. And as I said on the Senate floor, if you want your kids to learn the Ten Commandments, you can take them to church.
The ACLU plans to sue, arguing this law will make kids of different religious beliefs feel unsafe, saying politicians have no business imposing their preferred religious doctrine on students and families in public schools. Under the law, the state funds won't be used for the commandment displays. They'll be paid for by donations. Similar bills have been proposed in other states, but ran into legal challenges. Decades ago, the Supreme Court struck down a similar law in Kentucky, but now, if challenged, this Louisiana law will go before a more conservative Supreme Court.
I am the chosen one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm all confused now. Which is the religion? Which one is it? If you're going to go with Moses and the Ten Commandments, congratulations. We're all Jews now. How does that feel, baby? You like it? Are you in it? Holy crap. Haven't we had this argument before? I mean, didn't we all have this fight before? Didn't we? And wasn't the Supreme Court like church and state need to be separate? I'll separate you. Because you had to protect both. Church and state is separated for the preservation of both. Wasn't that the conclusion? Wasn't that what we actually, thought about America for the longest time? And why is it that the people that always want the Ten Commandments up in schools are the people who find it the hardest to follow those rules? Why is it? And, there's more than 10 commandments. Do you know that? And if we're going to do a Moses thing, then we are all Jewish, because this was so before Jesus. It was like 3,000 years before. Okay, really, Moses lived like I don't know. It depends. And they're saying, oh, it's a historical document. That's why we want it. It's historical. I'm like, oh yeah, what year was that? You want to do the history of it? Okay, what year was? Because no one knows. No one knows. I mean, it's all such crap. It's just such garbage. It's all just, to make Sharia law, the version of, what the Saudis have, make it happen here is what it is. I really, honestly, I don't understand it. Moses is an Old Testament guy. You guys out there that, the Pentecostals and the evangelicals and the Baptists and the Southern ones and the Northern ones and the Eastern ones and the Western ones, you're all about the New Testament. You're all about that new stuff. It's like, why would you want to even go back to the old? You know what the rules are? Do you understand what they are that you want to put up on the wall for your kids to, see as a historical document when you don't know what date it was? So basically, the Ten Commandments are like, no one brings cash to the temple and don't be a schmuck is basically what it is. I don't, and don't covet your neighbor's ass. So ask any of the old people older than me even, ask them, people who went to school like before 1954. That would not be me. But ask old people, okay? Whether or not, they benefited from having the Ten Commandments in their classroom, whether or not that was, something that guided their principles all throughout their, because I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it doesn't. But, this isn't, posting the Ten Commandments is now mandatory in Louisiana. Now, what's interesting is I don't know what language they're going to post it in. I'm going to guess it's not going to be the original Hebrew. I'm just going to guess that. But that, if you were going to do the historical document, that's what you would have to post. You would have to put it up there in good old-fashioned Hebrew, and everybody was going to have to learn that letters and numbers have do a whole study of it. But honestly, it won't be in Hebrew, and I don't think it'd be into the translated Greek. I'm guessing somewhere along the line it got translated into English. I don't know. I left off at Hebrew. So, you're going to have to tell me about your version of it because it makes no sense to me, really. It doesn't. But here's the thing. Louisiana is just about the worst. I mean, Mississippi exists just so that Louisiana isn't too embarrassed. But Louisiana is just about the last state in the United States for education, meaning reading, writing, and arithmetic. You would think that they would be much more interested in having kids be able to read the Ten Commandments than people posting posters of the Ten Commandments and having courts get involved in the posting of it. The posting. That's what's important. Not the actual reading or the analysis. I mean, for all we know, you could put up you could put up Section 18 of the U.S. Criminal Code, right? Because they're like, how are you going to get kids to respect the law if you don't start with Moses and the lawgivers? How about put up the U.S. Criminal Code? How about do that, right? And then next to it, have pictures of people who have violated that criminal code and the consequences they suffered. Because that's one way. That's just one way. It's just my version of how you get people to respect the law. Like make examples of people who broke it, and you teach them there's consequences for, cheating at elections. There's consequences for stealing documents. There just are. But no, they want to go back to the Ten Commandments, to Moses, it's just so interesting that the people who spend all this time trying to post the Ten Commandments are the people who have the least amount of time to observe the Ten Commandments. So let me do you a favor. If you're not clear, if you're not sure about what it is now that has to change in Louisiana, first of all, everybody is now Jewish, okay? Because the law was given to Moses. In fact, the whole Torah was, given to Moses. And so the whole Pentateuch, right, the whole first 5 books of your, sacred thing is really, it's all about Moses. Moses was dictated by God, okay? And it was very pre-Jesus, so Jesus is not a factor in any of this, not at all, okay? And in fact, when they say there is no God, before me, I don't know how you're going to, rationalize that to the kids. I don't know how you're going to explain it, but you'll find a way. I'm sure you will. Anyway, here's the things you need to know. The Jewish rules. What are they? Okay, so here's a rule of thumb, okay? And because it's easy breezy Judaism, because you could ask 2 Jews any question and you will get 3 opinions. That's just the way it is, and that's why we like it so much. There's a lot of room for discussion. However, the things in the Ten Commandments, not really much room for discussion. So, the Sabbath has to be kept holy. You know that, right? It's one of those top 10. So please write this down. The Sabbath is not Sunday. No, the Sabbath is Saturday. Saturday. And it starts on Friday night. Please make a note of it. Please jot it down and, plan your calendars accordingly. You cannot covet your neighbor's ass, even if it's J-Lo that you live next door from. Ha. No, seriously, you can't covet. You can't be jealous. You can't have that feeling. And kindness is right up there too. So can't be a Republican, I guess. I don't know. This could be good. It could work out. No pork, okay? If you're going to go all the way, there's 631 commandments, okay? There really are. There's 631. Has a very specific sort of a discussion about 631, the number itself and why there are. But just know this, no pork, okay? Can't have it, can't do it. No ribs for you, no nothing like that. And again, I think the top commandment, don't be a schmuck. Please write it down, please. Congratulations.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
given the storm season is coming up, we don't need the Ten Commandments. We need the Hail Mary.
Yeah.
It would be, much more appropriate for what we face with here in Louisiana. I don't know which one they're going to put up. There's 10 different versions of the Ten Commandments, and our schools are so underfunded that I'm not sure half the kids even know how to read them. But it's one of the dumbest waste of time I've ever seen in my life.
The schools in Louisiana traditionally have ranked very low in the rankings of schools in America. It's gone up, I think. Pre-K through 12 has gone up a little bit in recent years, but not by much.
Governor Edwards, John Bell did a great job. I mean, he got us, off the bottom, but Governor Landry's intent on putting us back on the bottom, it seems like. But I'm serious. When I look at this storm season and this summer coming ahead, it's going to be a fundamentally different country come mid-October of this year. It's going to really be bad.
Holy crap. That's kind of true. I mean, they're sitting there pretending that the Ten Commandments that can't be read or understood by, 5th graders, 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, 9th graders is going to solve the problem of, climate change, or is going to solve the problem of Louisiana looking fundamentally different come October because it's hurricane season now. And, we had the first named storm, I guess his name was Alberto. That didn't do anything really, and everybody's going to go, whoa, so you see, it's all bullcrap. No, we're just starting. Today is summer solstice. Apologies to all war veterans out there, but this is the longest day. It really is. But honestly, why aren't they expanding learning? They want to. This is what Republican Governor Jeff Landry said, with a package of other things that were designed to be helpful to schools. He said, we need to expand faith in public schools. You need to expand. How about expanding learning? How about expanding reading? How about expanding writing? How about expanding math? Especially if you're going to go all Jewish, because, letters and numbers are almost the same in Hebrew. I don't know how many people understand that Chai is 18 and like all these letters have numbers associated with them. And, it's fairly mathematical. And I just don't know how people are going to understand this religion. I'm not sure. But anyway, if you want to respect the rule of law, you got to start from the original lawgiver, which was Moses. The authors said that the measure is not solely religious, but that it has historical significance. Again, I ask, what is the date? What date is that? When was this document crafted? When was it written? When was it, And of course, it was supposedly written, by the finger of God. You understand that, right? And it predates Jesus. I just don't know how confusing it's going to get for people. I really don't. But, here we are. And so a school teacher in Louisiana, he's like, he's beside himself, okay? Because this is such posing. This is so unneeded, unnecessary. And, the idea that, kids have to go to school by law. So they're a captive audience, right? And that is why people object to it, because it's not like you're volunteering to go to Sunday school where you would get the education, and they could figure out how they explain to you that Moses was given God's word with God's finger, wrote it on the tablets, and that there's really 631. I don't know. This is something for Sunday school, but how are you going to do? I don't. And the school teachers that they're saying, I'm not even going to participate in this, okay? And when they come to my school and they tell me I have to, I'm not even going to do it. I'm not doing it.
So even though the governor signed this mandate, it's supposed to start in 2025, you say you're not going to comply with it.
No, Abby, I'm not. And if compelled to comply, it will be malicious compliance. I just think it is a foolish thing for us to be doing, regardless of your background, your religiosity or lack thereof. We have issues in the public school system in Louisiana, and I just don't really see how posting the 10 Commandments is going to do anything to solve any of them when we have real issues of staffing, understaffing, lack of resources, students below poverty level, homelessness, and students, and so on and so forth. So I'll focus on my students and what they need to succeed in this world, and I'll leave the cultural wars to somebody else.
So we're at the stage in our American life where book banning is actually a thing in schools. Screaming and yelling at school board meetings is a thing in schools. And now we're going to fight the culture wars in the classroom itself. Okay, not the library, not at the school board meeting, but in the classroom itself. We're going to bring the culture war into the 5th grade classroom with children who maybe haven't had breakfast, okay, and are very hungry, and all they want to do is get to lunch so maybe they could get a free meal. But they're not interested in the free meal. They're interested in the 10 Commandments, the school, the lords of the school. I mean, not really sure how this benefits anybody to bring the culture war right into that classroom there and put the kids in the, the middle of it. Not really sure how you're protecting church and state by mashing the two together. Not really sure, unless there's a religious thing that's happening way above my head that has nothing to do with religion but has to do with control and a belief system that nobody knows yet which one it will be. I just hope, for the benefit of people who, think that the 10 Commandments is a great addition to the classroom, I just hope you know which religion you're choosing. And good luck with it. Good luck with it. It's not as straightforward as you might have hoped. Okay, but good luck with it. And then when people start yelling at you and blaming you for what the right-wing Likud party in Israel is doing in Gaza, just know, how to answer that question. Okay, just know. Dick in Dayton.
Hi, Randy.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Well, I mean, I've heard things. I've heard things about you that I'm not happy with.
What's that?
So you were trying to get on the show for the past 2 days to say that you didn't want Juneteenth to be a federal holiday, that you thought it was wrong.
Well, Randy, I okay, you're whatever you said. I now that I listened to you yesterday, maybe I was wrong.
Oh, good.
I was wrong, Randy. I agree with what you said. That's good. It's a good thing because somebody explained it to me today. One of the professors. I'm sorry that I said that, okay?
Okay.
I apologize. But I'm saying, Randy, just forgive me, okay?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Randy, I wanted to say about, I never learned much about religion until I was older, but I think the 10 Commandments in school for the little children, maybe they don't understand, but I believe in God and the 10 Commandments. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
And I'm saying, I don't think it's wrong, Randy, but I misunderstood you about, I believe in holidays, my family, they serve the country, and our little band, we play music, and I agree with you, I agree with what you said, Randy.
Thank you. Great. Good. See, one at a time, everybody, one at a time. You got it. You got to do it one at a time. And when somebody says, you were right, I was wrong, and thank you for explaining, just say, okay.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
If they steal this election, and they fully intend to steal it, this republic ends. Are you prepared to fight? Are you prepared to give it all? Are you prepared to leave it all on the battlefield? Ladies and gentlemen, it's very simple. Victory or death.
There's a bunch of anti-Semites getting together and violating all the commandments, just violating every single last one of them, bearing false witness, inciting violence, coveting what your neighbor has, being jealous of Biden because he won, lying about that fact. Wow. So who wants to tell the anti-Semites at, talking, what is it, TP, what is it, Talking Points Action, Talking Points USA? Who wants to tell Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon? By the way, hygiene is very big in Judaism. It's huge. It's really, really a big damn deal. Somebody needs to tell Steve Bannon about that, because this is, this is where they landed. I don't know I'm trying to help them. I'm trying, but I don't know. James in Washington.
Yes.
Hello.
What I wanted to... Oh.
What? What's wrong?
Oh, I was watching the TV. And no. Okay, so I was a bit confused. At
That's all right. It happens.
A little slow processing sometimes. I know you can appreciate my comment because you're a vet. These people with the MAGA crowd wearing the flag the way they do is clothing.
Oh.
They're not informed. They don't realize there's an actual code of conduct concerning our flag.
Hey, why don't we post that?
That would be a good idea.
Why don't we post the code, the flag code? Like it should never hit the ground. Don't let it fly when it's raining.
Mm-hmm. Don't sit on it.
Don't sit on it. Don't wear it. Don't burn it. You can.
Yeah.
You can. I would protect, but you should. I mean, why don't we post
Thank
that?
you.
Something useful, something that they could actually, apply in their day-to-day lives, the little toddlers, little kids. Why don't we just...
Yeah, and it's tantamount to spitting on it. The way they're treating it, they're trying to honor it and be patriotic, but what they're doing is spitting on it.
Yeah, I mean, they like it for everything except, for what it stands for.
Amen.
Which is, all of us, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. But, who gets to say which one? I guess Louisiana does. So, yeah. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I think that's a very good offering for the little kids. I think that they should learn that early and often. It's interesting because my dad had a thing for the flag. I mean, he really loved it. He did. He loved it. He flew it on Flag Day. I don't know very many people that fly the flag on Flag Day anymore, but we had, we had a two-family house, right? So below us was an apartment sort of a situation. And then you had to walk up like 150,842 stairs to get to our house, to get upstairs to our front door. And then off of that, was a little porch where you could sit. And that had the flagpole. And the flag would fly over the driveway, see? And my dad was very clear about the flag flying rules. And I don't think the children today understand the rules. I don't think they do. I also noticed we had a call from somebody, I don't know where she went, but she said, why don't we post the Bill of Rights in the school? I think that's a nice addition, too. I think that would be helpful. I think that would, serve the little children well. They would learn a little something about what, rights they have and what rights they don't. Instead of the Ten Commandments, which could be very confusing, especially if you're going to fly it in the, post it in the original Hebrew. And I don't think they said. I don't think they're clear about which language they're going to do. But, English only, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi. I don't think it's going to be Hebrew. Do you? No. But, listen, if you're gonna say that it is the word of God and these are the laws, then you have to actually show them what God's finger put on the tablet, and that would be Hebrew. See? So now when you start getting into the nitty-gritty of it, and they're saying, well, it's a historical document. Well, damn right it is. God wrote it with his little finger. Very historical. We have no idea what date it was, none. But we do know that it was written in Hebrew. So, why don't you post it that way so that the historic value of it is fully appreciated by the little children? They would ask about those, things on those tablets. They would ask, what is that? What does that mean? And you would have to then explain to them what Hebrew is. I would be for that. Not really. But, it's a way of discussing the disingenuous nature of wanting to post this as some sort of law instruction, which should never happen until law school. You know that, right? Because law is confusing. It's complex. There are 110 exceptions to even getting one piece of evidence into a trial, right? Law is not simple. It's not straightforward. And so if you're going to start with it and you're going to start with it early, I suggest you create some sort of a fascination around it. And the way to do that is to post it in the original Hebrew, just saying. But this is such a waste. He's right. I mean, Carville's right. This is such a monumental waste of time and money. And why do I say money? Because it's not going to be supported by taxpayer dollars. Okay, we know that. It never was. When the Ten Commandments were in schools before, and they were in schools before, I think they were in there until like 1971. And then suddenly the Establishment Clause became a knowable thing. Don't know why it took that long. But and of course the Supreme Court weighed in 1980 as well and said, no, for the preservation of church and state, we need to keep them separated. You see, then that way you'll have both things in good stead. Both things will be healthy. Both things will be well. You mash them together, and one of them's going to win, and the other one will go away. And like, who would want that? Do you know what I mean? Like, who would want the abolishment of, state? And only religion. You know what I mean? That would make you practically a mullah. So who would want that? And on the other side of the coin, who would want religion wiped away and only have the state? Well, I think you might find more support for that than my original offering. Do you know what I'm saying? Because, but the reason why they're kept separate is so we don't have to wrestle with one of them winning. You see, that's the genius of the Constitution, which doesn't mention God in it at all, ever. There's a reason for that. So, color me, somebody that would like to have both. I would like to preserve. I'm like that, But anyway, it's going to fail, and that's why I say it's going to cost money, because this is going to go through the courts. And in fact, Governor Landry, who has been very busy taking away women's rights, taking away freedoms, taking away, gay marriage is going. It is. It's on the chopping block, at least in the Deep South, the Southern strategy being what it is and all. But honestly, like when you see what they're spending their time on, you understand what the end game is, right? You get that. But they're taking away people's freedom. They're taking away people's right, and they're supplanting something else. And no one knows what that something else is going to look like. People kind of think they do, but what if you're wrong? And it's kind of like time to wear your buckle on your hat again.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Friday's ruling is yet another warning that this MAGA court is going off the deep end, aligning itself more and more with the most extreme elements of the hard right. They have struck down freedom of choice, environmental protections, affirmative action, fair redistricting, gun safety, and more. The MAGA Supreme Court is now even further to the right of Donald Trump, who's very hard right himself.
This is the crazy part. So obviously, there are other documents they want to post, right? And this is where, your mind starts to, click in and say, wait a minute. What is the secular value of posting the Ten Commandments? Like, what is their goal here? When you consider that one of the other documents for historical value for the little kids that they're putting up in Louisiana classrooms is the Mayflower Compact. What? Not the Bill of Rights? No. How about the Magna Carta? No. The Mayflower Compact, 1620. What was that? Well, that was an agreement between the Puritans, so I'm not kidding about putting buckles on your hat, taking your belt buckle and putting it on your hat, and then burning witches. This is pretty much where they're headed. If the Mayflower Compact is one of their chosen guiding lights, because that was a document meant to, there's supposed to be more than one ship that came to America. One ship was supposed to carry the Puritans, and the other one was supposed to carry the Protestants, who wanted to be free of the king's religion. But something happened, and there was only one boat, the Mayflower. And so they had to share the space, and it wasn't really friendly. There was a culture war on the Mayflower, you understand, and they were going to kill each other over their religious differences, which were the differences between, let's say, Protestant and Baptist. Oh! Yeah. It's a fine line, baby, when you start to divide people up like that. And they had to sign a compact saying they wouldn't hurt each other. They wouldn't kill each other, that they could be on the same boat and that they could arrive here in one piece. That's what they want on the wall of the school. That's what they want. Now, if this has some secular meaning for the children? Like you're going to teach them about how religion can actually divide people who are so much the same and very dissimilar? Then fine, have at it. But I don't think that's the purpose of it at all. They're picking something. They're picking something by putting up the Ten Commandments and the Mayflower Compact. And I don't know if it's going to be something you would pick for your children. I honestly don't know. I really don't. So here is where they are. This is what they're focusing on. This is what they're concentrating on in the Deep South, okay? They're not doing anything about, remediation for, car emissions or building, a good levee system or, building, some sort of, reef refurbishment or something after the hurricane. No. And they're certainly not interested in teaching their kids, real history or true history or how to read the history. They're interested in a religious doctrine being given to children early and often. And the goal of this has no secular value, none whatsoever. And for people who know that we have the Establishment Clause because we could never, ever, decide on what religion we would establish. Like, would it be Protestant? Would it be Baptist? Would it be Methodist? Would it be, a Lutheran? Would it be, easy breezy Hindu? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what anybody would pick if they had to pick just one. But this is the goal, okay? And there's no question that this is the goal. It's just that we don't know which one. We just don't know. If they were really interested in handing laws or making kids respect the laws, they would enforce the laws. And they don't want to against Donald Trump, okay? He should be bulletproof. He should be immune. In fact, you know what tomorrow is? Tomorrow, God, this alien cannon woman who obviously has an ulterior motive, and I really do think it's to replace Alito when he retires, because Mrs. Alito has made it very clear that there's a 5-year statute of limitation on getting even with her neighbor. She wants to do that, and she feels she will be free within 5 years to do that, to get her retribution, retaliate against her neighbor. And by the way, these very religious icons, the Alitos and the neighbor, ended up calling each other the C word, okay? This is, really a beautiful way to behave. This is a wonderful way for ladies to comport themselves, or anybody really, to comport themselves in, and if you're going to do the Ten Commandments, you really do have to love thy neighbor, okay, as thyself. Oh, and by the way, the Sabbath does apply to your maids. It does. It applies to your cattle, even. It applies to your livestock. So just make a note of it as we go and learn, what they're encouraging here. But obviously, there is something that is untoward going on in their feeble little uber-religious minds. And it doesn't have anything to do with freedom. It doesn't have anything to do with learning. It doesn't have anything to do with making us strong or making us, the envy of the world. No, it has to do with picking a religion and forcing it down the throats of the next generation. And we already had this argument, and this is why I'm saying, it's going to go to the court. Obviously, it's going to go to the court. You already have Catholic schools in the area very upset about this, very, very peeved, very pissed. You have a lot of people, the ACLU and others, who are interested in keeping church and state separate for the preservation of both, and asking people, what is your secular purpose to do this? Because they're saying, oh, it's very historical. So we're going to teach history in this weird way. Okay, all right. What's the date of the document? Right. So get it off your wall, okay? Because you're a kid. You're going to be curious. You're going to go, what date was that? Okay? You're trying to tell me 1620 for the Mayflower Compact. Got it. So what's the date for this? What's the date for that? We don't know. Okay, we'll take it down. It's going to go to court. The thing is that Governor Landry has said, I can't wait to be sued, which means he can't wait to spend Louisiana taxpayer dollars on this case. And that's why it costs money, okay? That's why it will cost money in Louisiana, where they really need to spend money on school staffing, where they really need to spend money on lunch, where they really need to spend money on kids that are homeless who are coming to school for shelter. Okay? It's a sad state of affairs in Louisiana. It's sadder in Mississippi, but just a little. And this is what they're going to spend their money on. They're going to spend their money on going to court. And you know how much it costs because, you know, maggots are actually giving Donald Trump all the money he needs to go to court, to stay in court, to actually delay everything in court. It's amazing. You know, they'll live in a single wide, but they'll send Donald Trump $15, which he'll spend on lawyers, like high fancy falutin ones that you could never afford. But they'll do it. I mean, it's so weird what they will spend their money on in service of destroying government. I mean, just say what it is. Because, like I said, if you have church and state competing against each other, one has to win. This is what Alito was telling Lauren Windsor the other day. Okay, she's the person who goes around and, gets invited to, joins these groups actually, and gets the invitations to go, shows up at Magaloco, shows up at, the Supreme Court events, and brings a tape recorder with her, and she asks questions. Now, Roberts was, kind of dignified, although his court is in shambles, and his legacy is going to be this court, which he should be embarrassed about, but at least he didn't pick sides on some of the more difficult political issues of the day. However, Alito did. And as a judge, judges are very famous for splitting the baby. Don't believe me? You'll see tomorrow. I think, or I don't know if it'll be tomorrow. Today we had, namby-pamby decisions about, the repatriation of foreign money. If you make money in India, there's a family, the Moors, they made money in India. They want to bring it to the United States. They're saying, well, then if you do that, you have to pay tax on it. Okay, you earned it over there, but you want to bring it over here, you're going to pay tax on it. They said, yeah, you do have to pay tax. Okay, this is what they decided today. But the immunity case for Donald Trump, that still hasn't been decided yet. And you just know they're going to save it to the last possible second, and then they're going to throw it out there, or they'll do it tomorrow. Why tomorrow? Because Aileen Cannon, that miscreant, is having an all-day hearing tomorrow. All-day hearing to find out whether or not the independent counsel statute is constitutional. Again, we've had that argument. We've had it many, many times. We've had independent counsels all during the history of the United States of America. I mean, forever. It's very constitutional. But she's going to entertain the idea tomorrow that it's not, just to delay it. Because she wants to be on the Supreme Court. And Alito is a religious zealot.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Good evening. The U.S. Supreme Court, acting as swiftly as it ever has, today announced it will review the special Watergate prosecutor's complaint against President Nixon. It was just 1 week ago today when Leon Jaworski asked the court to rule on the president's defiance of a subpoena for more White House tapes. It was yesterday when the president's lawyer asked the court not to rush to judgment and allow the case to be heard in the Court of Appeals. But this afternoon, the court said it would hear oral arguments in about 5 weeks, which set the stage for a possible confrontation between the president and the High Court on the issue of executive privilege.
At 3:30, the weekly conference ended. 10 minutes later, the Chief Justice issued a single sheet of paper, setting in motion the biggest constitutional test of presidential power since the Civil War. In the case, now entitled United States of America versus Richard Nixon, President, the court agreed to settle the question whether the president can be compelled to furnish evidence to the Watergate special prosecutor. Bypassing the Court of Appeals, the court said briefs should be submitted June 21st and replies July 1st. The historic argument was set for July 8th.
Good evening. The Supreme Court of the United States today heard 3 hours of arguments that could very well determine President Nixon's chances of staying in office for a full term. There were two principal questions before the court: whether Mr. Nixon can be forced to give up an additional 64 White House tapes to the special prosecutor, and whether the federal grand jury was within its jurisdiction when it named the president an unindicted co-conspirator. The thrust of the argument centered on the release of the additional tapes.
A decision is expected in a week or two. Even before this morning's argument, one justice was writing and circulating his ideas. Another had his clerk prepare a draft opinion.
Good evening. President Nixon has not yet responded to the sledgehammer decision of the Supreme Court today, which ruled that he must immediately turn over tapes of 64 presidential conversations. In a unanimous decision written by Chief Justice Warren Burger, the court rejected 8-0 Mr. Nixon's claim of absolute privilege on those tapes.
The court said the president's claim of absolute privilege would upset the constitutional balance of a workable government. It said its ruling was only that the president had to give way in criminal proceedings, a very limited intrusion since presidents would rarely be involved in criminal cases.
Ha! So, from beginning to end, in 1974, the U.S. versus Nixon case, which was a case to find out whether or not a president had absolute privilege, okay, and didn't have to turn over any information, any documents, any tapes in this case, okay, from beginning to end, took 54 days. From beginning to end. 54 days. Done. Yes, president doesn't have absolute, privilege. He has to turn over the tapes. He was discussing crimes on those tapes. The American people have a right to know that he was conducting burglaries, that he was paying burglars to break into his political opponents' offices. 54 days. We are 112 days down the road from when the Supreme Court said that they would decide, they would hear whether or not Donald Trump has absolute immunity. So twice the number of days so far to get halfway there, meaning they're going to hear it. That's all we know. And that they don't think that the precedent of Nixon is anything. 50 years of precedent for women, that's not a thing. Mifepristone, that's been on the market for 20 years in the United States. Before that, 20 years in Europe. Ahead of that, 40 years. We didn't really decide it. We just kicked the can down the road saying, well, the doctors that brought this case, they weren't harmed in any way by having to prescribe mifepristone because they already had a religious objection that removed them from ever writing a prescription for mifepristone. And in our way of doing things, when you separate church and state the way that we do, you could have a religious objection in your career and not ever write a prescription for mifepristone. And so the Supreme Court said, well, you don't have standing, so we can't decide this case. But that was fun. We really enjoyed hearing from you. Let's do it again sometime soon. Same thing with this. There is no question here. There's no question. And tomorrow in Aileen Cannon's court, there's no question about what she's going to have a hearing on either, and that is whether or not the independent counsel is a legitimate constitutional thing that, the Department of Justice can appoint in order to deal with political issues that the Department of Justice doesn't want to touch because it's political. And of course we know that. Leon Jaworski, that was the name of the independent counsel there. You know what's really fascinating? I don't hear any Republicans complaining about Mr. Hur being assigned to be independent counsel to investigate Hunter Biden. Remember that? Never heard them, attack him. I never heard them attack Durham, the special prosecutor. Never heard that. But for some reason, there's sort of, I don't know, all of a sudden the special counsel or an independent prosecutor or, even a prosecutor from a state, they all have to be attacked. They all have to be, investigated. So let's see who's on that list. Well, tomorrow it will be Jack Smith. Whether or not Jack Smith is constitutionally allowed to bring cases against the previous president for everything from inciting violence, January 6th, to the Espionage Act, which is what Aileen Cannon's case is about, violation of the Espionage Act. But instead of hearing the case, which really ought to have, it should have been tried by now. And my guess is if it had started when it was supposed to start, let's see, May 20th is when it was supposed to start. Did you? I still have it on my little board there. I told you I'd put it there. May 20th is when it was supposed to start. It's now June 20th, okay? That probably could have been tried to verdict by now. But anyway, she's doing her level best to stop that from happening. And so she's going to have a hearing on whether or not Jack Smith is constitutionally operating, meaning is that even a thing that can be done in the United States, have an independent prosecutor? So that's what she's going to be doing while the Supreme Court is still holding on to, for 112 days now, whether or not a president has absolute immunity. Now, if both things happen at the same time and the Supreme Court weighs in tomorrow morning at, let's say, 9:30, right around the time that she's convening, and they say, yes, he has some, and I'm telling you, they'll split the baby on this. Don't try me, but write this down that I said it, and we'll see if I'm right, okay? That they'll split it, meaning they'll say, well, there are certain things the president does in his official duties as president that ought to be protected. And then there are things that he does personally and politically that he does while he's president but aren't presidential duties that aren't protected. And if they do that, guess what happens? Guess. It goes back down to the lower court. And the lower court then has to have hearings on what are official duties of the president and what aren't. Okay, so, but if the Supreme Court weighs in and says, well, he has, immunity, he has absolute immunity, which I don't think they'll do, because that means that Biden can now do whatever he wants to his political opponent because he's president, and he'd be immune from prosecution for anything, including murder of a political opponent. He could call SEAL Team 6, and he could have them target his political opponent. So, no, that's not going to happen. But think about what's going on here, okay? Just think about how they're trying to shield this man. Why? Because their wet dream, honestly, is the destruction of the rule of law by men and a rising up of the rule of law by, apparently, God. The Moses version so far. Yeah, and I'm telling you, this is what the delay is all about. 112 days. We're into that they would even hear this case. That she's even doing what she's doing, Aileen County, tomorrow. This is ridiculous.
Thanks, Randy, at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
It's also really worth remembering the last time the Supreme Court heard a case this pressing, the direct analog. It involved a corrupt Republican president. It was in 1974. Mm-hmm. It had United States in the title. United States versus Nixon.
Yeah.
And that, of course, was when then sitting President Nixon claimed he was immune from complying with the subpoena in the Watergate investigation because of executive privilege. In that case, the Supreme Court managed to move much more expeditiously.
Yeah.
5 decades ago, the court took less than 2 months to decide President Nixon's case. They agreed to hear the case on May 31st, 1974. You see it there. They gave each set of lawyers 3 weeks to file their briefs, then 10 days after that to reply. The court heard oral arguments on July 8th, and just 16 days later, just over 2 weeks, they issued their unanimous opinion rejecting President Nixon's claim of executive privilege. In total, from start to finish, all done in 54 days.
54 days.
Just 54 days to decide Richard Nixon's case, and we are still waiting for the outcome of Donald Trump's after 112 days and counting.
Something is really, really disgustingly wrong with the Supreme Court, and I think a lot of us know that because we've seen Alito get tape recorded by Lauren Windsor and say, oh, you can't split the baby. You can't have two sides, because one of them will win. This is a judge, and judges split babies. It is sort of, if you wanted to get all biblical about it, it's sort of Solomon's story, okay? You split the baby is what you do. That's what judges almost always do. And here's Alito saying, well, when it comes to church and state, because that's what Lauren Windsor was posing as. Somebody who said, you know, we have to fight them tooth and nail in order to get a national religion. We have to actually do something about this. We have to. And he goes, yeah, because, you know, they can't cohabitate. They can't both live together. One side is going to win. And he's already decided that you can't have church and state. This is why Donald Trump, just so you know, this is why guys like Mike Johnson, who have a very hard time, you know, observing the Ten Commandments, say that they're doing it to please God in their own feeble minds, okay? What is it? Endorsing Donald Trump, one of the biggest lawbreakers in the history of the world, let alone our country. I mean, Richard Nixon, what did he do? It was a burglary. It really was. He burgled a lot of places. He burgled, the psychiatrist's office of Daniel Ellsberg to try and blackmail Daniel Ellsberg, who leaked the Pentagon Papers, which clearly showed we could not win the war in Vietnam. It wasn't winnable. Then he, had the plumbers, is what he called them, break into the Democratic National Committee headquarters in the Watergate Hotel, hence Watergate, right? And so we've had these cases before, and this was a low-level burglary. This was like, a small little, what we're talking about here is it violation of the Espionage Act, the Insurrection Act in another case. Then you got Fonnie Willis, who's got a RICO case. And what do they do for Donald Trump? What do they do for him? They either A, run interference, or B, attack the prosecutors over and over and over again. That's what Eileen Count is going to do tomorrow all day in her courtroom. She's going to have a hearing on a settled issue of law. Whether or not you can have Jack Smith investigating the past president of the United States. Well, of course you can. We've always had the ability to investigate political wrongdoers, political criminals. Richard Nixon was investigated for this stupid burglary. I'm sure he couldn't believe it. But there it is. 1974, baby. Banner year for keeping presidents accountable to the rule of law. This is like massive wrongdoing compared to that. I mean, it's huge. It's humongous. It's sexual abuse, sexual assault, business fraud, charity fraud. Documents, stealing documents and obstructing the return of said documents for a year saying, I don't have them. And if I do have them, it's because you planted them. And, I do have them. They're mine. I'm not returning them. I mean, really, this was craziness. This is madness. That's just one case. But every single time they find these, compliant judges who have decided that the best way to destroy the state, meaning government, the best way to destroy government and replace it with religion, is Donald Trump. They really have decided that Donald Trump will defund the government for them. And that all that will be left is a religious zealotry. And I don't know what religion it is. I mean, I have my thoughts. I think it's Opus Dei Catholicism, personally. That would explain the hatred of contraception. I mean, nothing else will. But that explains to me the hatred of contraception and a whole host of, medical procedures that they think is somehow violative of the rule of God. I don't know. But think about it. Tomorrow she's going after the special counsel, Jack Smith, okay? And then today we have Trump's lawyers asking Judge Engoron in New York, who presided over the fraud case, to recuse himself from the sentencing portion of it, okay? And then you have Jack Smith, who's going to be attacked tomorrow all day. And then you have Fannie Willis also, who was, whose entire life hangs in the balance as far as, can she continue to prosecute Trump because they attacked her too for apparently having an affair with a guy who was also on her team. Now, I could see if Fannie Willis had an affair with the defense counsel, that might be troublesome. But having an affair with somebody you work with who's on your team, I'm sorry, does that not happen? Because I thought work was a really good place to meet somebody. I thought that was one of our okay places to find somebody that, you get along with, that you like, and you go to lunch. And then if he pays, you say, oh, he's interested. Do you know what I mean? That's how I thought. But apparently, it's the same as if she was sleeping with one of the defense counsels to try and get information about the way they would defend the case. It's the same. What? So they just keep on attacking the prosecutors. It's a pattern. It's a pattern. And it's the last Hail Mary. It's the last ditch. It's the last place. It's the last delay that they have. And by them, I mean the Trump team. It's the last place that they can go to delay things, is to question the prosecutors now. They're not, listen, if Donald Trump really felt like he didn't do any of these things, he would want a trial to clear his name. But every time Donald Trump has been on trial, he loses because he did the thing. So Donald Trump doesn't want to be on trial for the Espionage Act, and Donald Trump doesn't want to be on trial for the January 6th and the violation of the Insurrection Act, or being... No, he doesn't, because he'll lose, because he did the things. So the only thing that's left is to attack the people who are prosecuting and make them stand trial. For what? But the right wing, the uber right wing, the religious right wing, the fundamentalist right wing has selected Donald Trump because they feel like he doesn't care about anything except staying out of prison. That's all he wants from the presidency. And he will put all these agencies under his purview and destroy every one of them. And that's what they want.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Okay, so you thought that Byron Jim Crow Donalds was offensive in saying that, as an African-American male who, was born in New York and now is a representative from Florida, that the Jim Crow era was really a good time for African-Americans. You thought that was humiliating, okay? Wait. So now you have like a billionaire businessman, Doug Burgum, who really does want to be the vice president of the United States. And they literally have to get supine. They literally have to lick his boots. They literally have to humiliate themselves in front of him on a television show in order for him to even consider. Like J.D. Vance. Remember J.D. Vance? J.D. Vance said that Donald Trump was a crook. Donald Trump was a criminal. He was a liar. He was a thief. He was all these things. And that J.D. Vance was a never-Trumper. And now he's like, Donald Trump is the best thing since, they said, let's slice the bread, and just literally humiliating himself in the face of, videos showing that and that. Rubio, too, saying the same thing. And Lindsey Graham, same thing. Donald Trump is a kook. Okay. And now saying Donald Trump is going to save us from Joe Biden, who is a dictator. This is the new thing. So now you have to go on TV and you have to say Biden is the criminal and Biden is the dictator. Okay, really.
Under Joe Biden, we're actually living under a dictatorship today where he's, bypassing Congress on immigration policy. He's bypassing Congress on protecting our border. He's bypassing Congress on student loan forgiveness. He's defying the Supreme Court. Those are the things that authoritarians and dictators do, is they don't follow our democratic processes and they just assert their own liberal view. And that's what the Biden administration is doing.
Okay. That's not what the Biden administration is doing. However, the idea that you have to get on the TV and say that Biden is the dictator, that he is the dictator, when Donald Trump clearly said he will be a dictator on day one, at least on day one. Okay, but just for a day. This is his position. He will be a dictator. And also he's a felon, like demonstrably, provably a felon, like dictionary definition of a felon. Found guilty of 34 felonies by a jury of his peers in his home state, in his home borough. You can't get more granular than that. These are the people that know him the best. Anyway, this is the new thing. You have to actually project that Biden is the dictator. You have to project that Biden is the felon. I didn't pull it, but Lindsey Graham is literally saying that Joe Biden is the felon. That what he's doing to this country is criminal. That's how he got there. It's really strange, and it's really ugly, and it's really sick. But if you understood what they understood about what would happen if Trump won and how ugly it will be and how dictatory it would get, and, like which side of that violence you want to be on and which side of that violence you don't want to be on, especially when you have a guy who is saying he will set up camps, you have a guy who is saying he will build camps, he will do raids and mass deportations. And, you never know, like, who'll get mixed up in all that, right? And so people who know how serious Trump is about doing really authoritarian things, really fascist things, really ugly things, they don't want to be on the wrong side of this. Now, if he loses, well, they hedged their bet, right? They said they could say to him, I tried, but you lost. But if he wins, they can't be on the other side of him. They can't, because he will retaliate against them. He will put them in a camp. He will sick his sycophants on them, okay? So this is why that is going on. But when you realize what the end game is and what it looks like and who wants it that way, you have to not pass over the fundamentalist evangelical Christians in this country. Because for the longest time, I've heard people go, why do they support him? I hope now you understand why. I hope you understand why. They think that he is dictatorial enough to abolish things like the Department of Justice, like the FBI, like the Environmental Protection Agency, like the Food and Drug Administration, like the CDC, all of it, and replace it with pray about it. Replace it with justice that's meted out by, the high priests. Edicts about contraception, edicts about, they'll destroy, complete entire families, LGBT families. They will no longer exist. They will not be recognized in law. God only knows what happens to the unit or the children or the property or honestly, the stuff that they will put us through is going to be stuff no one is going to be happy with. No one's going to be comfortable with it. They're just not. Normal people will not be comfortable with any of this. Even the people who think they're for this, they will not be comfortable with this. But that's kind of what they're counting on Trump to do. And anything less than that you're thinking, it will never happen. Don't think it will never happen. Don't think it's so bad that it couldn't happen. This man, this particular one, is such a malignant narcissist, such a ego-feeding, needy guy, that in order to have no one's head higher than his, he will bring it all down. And they think that's the vacuum in which they assert themselves. Now, when you have a Supreme Court that looks like this one, when you have a Supreme Court that is telling you that church and state can't argue with each other because somebody will win, as a Supreme Court justice saying that, it's a thing. It's a thing. They have chosen in the church and state equation which side they want to win, and it ain't the state. It's not government. It's not democracy. It's not a republic. It's not any of those things. And so you need to own this. And when you go to vote, and make sure you do, understand that there's a handful of people in this country who are the deciders, and they're kind of the low information voters. Sometimes they vote, sometimes they don't. But it's going to come down to 11,000 people in Wisconsin. It's going to come down to 12,000 people in Arizona. It's going to come down to 10,000 people in Pennsylvania. It is. And what is on the line is everything. Everything. Biden keeps telling you, we never really realized, the more perfect union. We never really realized the, out of many one. We've never realized, complete equality and recognition of each other as being complete equals and all made in God's image and all, citizens of this state and all citizens of the country. But we never walked away from it. Well, they want to walk away from it. They just and the followers, they just don't think it would work. They think it's been disappointing, messy, heavy lift, time consuming, and they would just rather leave it to, the high priests, because they think the priests will actually hate the same people that they do. Oh, I don't think there's any guarantee of that. Have another beer.
Fatality. This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Okay, this is Mark Esper, who was our Secretary of Defense, recalling how Donald Trump wanted the protesters in Lafayette Square to be cleared with bullets. With bullets.
He's going to finally give a direct order to deploy paratroopers into the streets of Washington, D.C., and I'm thinking with weapons and bayonets. And this would be horrible.
What specifically was he suggesting that the U.S. military should do to these protesters?
He says, can't you just shoot them? Just shoot them in the legs or something. And he's suggesting that that's what we should do, that we should bring in the troops and shoot the protesters.
The commander-in-chief was suggesting that the U.S. military shoot protesters.
Yes, in the streets of our nation's capital. That's right.
Oh, my God. So whatever you're thinking, and it seems really dark, and it seems really unthinkable, and it seems really un-American, double it, triple it, square it, cube it, okay? Because this is what Donald Trump is. He is a person with no conscience. He is a person with no character, no morals, no integrity, no regard, no compassion, and no tolerance for anybody else. No tolerance. Everybody follows him, or they get crushed, or they get smashed, or they get shot, or they get paratroopers in their face. This is who he is, okay? And the idea that people like Mark Esper, believe it or not, which, not my favorite pick, but that they stood in the lurch, they stood in the breach, and they stopped him from doing that. That's what Project 2025 is trying to, let's say, repair. They don't want somebody who will stand in the breach and say, I'm sorry, sir, I can't follow that order. That would be illegal. That would be attacking my fellow American. The military operating on American streets in and of itself is an illegal action. Paratroopers, unthinkable. Shooting protesters in the leg or any other body part in Washington, D.C., in Lafayette Square Park, no less, across the street from the White House. I'm sorry, no. They don't want that person there anymore. The idea of Project 2025 is to be ready on day one to have people who will be loyal to shooting protesters in the leg or some other body part. That's what it's about. That's where we are. It's horrible, but that's where we are. And, the idea that there's going to be something that is going to be uncomfortable as a result of this election, whether it's a Trump loss or a Trump win, something's going to be uncomfortable with the result. And quite frankly, something is, somebody's going to protest, let's just say. And depending on who the winner is, the way those protesters will be treated, meaning if they take a dump in the halls of Congress, they will be arrested if Biden wins. If they take a dump in the halls of Congress and Trump wins, and they're taking the dump there to send a message to Democrats, nothing will happen to them. The people who would protest a result where Donald Trump, they will be obviously taken care of by, I don't know, his militia, Proud Boys who are standing back and standing by, 3%ers, Oath Keepers, other militias, I don't know. But trust me, they will have legal cover if Donald Trump wins to do whatever to whoever they disagree with. So whatever you're thinking, make sure that you double it. Richard in Texas. Yes. Michael in Pennsylvania.
Hey, Randy. How
Hi.
you doing?
Hi.
Let me suggest with the Supreme Court what they're doing in the immunity case.
Okay.
I think besides delay, they're going to come down with an advisory opinion. Send it back to the lower court and say, okay, Mr. Trump, if you prove A, B, C, D, and E in the lower court, then when you come back to us, we'll say you have immunity.
No, it's going to be this. Okay, what they're going to do, in my opinion, is they're going to say there are certain things that, as president, you have to do that are, distasteful. Like, let's say, bomb an enemy territory, and there will be sometimes civilian deaths, casualties, whatever, and the president cannot be tried for that, right? Because he's the commander in chief, you can't try him for that. However, if the president is doing something personally with regard to political, outcomes, then, maybe he isn't immune from prosecution. But we don't know what those things are. You have to send that back to the lower court, and they will have to have a hearing about what is an official duty and what is an unofficial duty. This way, it just delays it even further, and that's all they'll do.
Oh, well, I think we agree.
No, we don't.
Okay.
I'm saying that they will leave it to the lower court to say what's an official act of a president and what's a political act of a president, what's covered and what's not covered. Instead of saying, just generally, if a president commits a criminal act, then the presidency is no shield to immunity. But they will leave it to the lower court to figure out, well, certain things might be immune and other things might not. So lower court, you have to have hearings again, and you're going to have to call Mr. whatever his name, the guy that sounds like Gilbert Gottfried. You're going to have to call him back, and he'll tell you, whether or not he believes that, calling SEAL Team 6 and executing your, political rival is an official act or not. And that guy will actually make this case. He will say, well, if you think that your political opponent is trying to steal an election, well, then, as president, you have the authority to make sure that that rival, even though they're just a rival, isn't going to steal an election. That's an official act. That's what's going to happen. That's what they'll be arguing in the lower court after the Supreme Court splits the baby. Are you there?
I couldn't hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't we disagree? I think.
Rewind the tape, because I think I was very clear about it. This is what I believe they'll do. Okay. I just don't see them saying president could do whatever he wants. He's immune from prosecution because he's the president. I don't. Although, I will say the Office of Legal Counsel, the OLC, has this opinion letter that clearly says you can't indict a sitting president, even if he shoots somebody on Fifth Avenue. But, words have meaning, and an indictment of a sitting president is not where we are now. Okay, the president he's not president, and he has been indicted. So that's not the issue, although it does get, kind of a mind-effing experience, Jules in Missouri.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. I always agree with you, so I guess I'm a victim. But anyway, one of the reasons for this foray into religion is because you can make it up as you go along. Yeah. You can produce extra constitutional law on the spot. And I want to say one thing for people to be aware of. Be sure you don't listen to anyone that right in the middle of your argument, they say, well, the Bible says, because they are making it up as they go along, and the Bible doesn't say anything. And the worst thing they ever did in the Bible is put numbers on every phrase and sentence.
So it could be quoted that way, yeah. Well, I think a really good movie for people who have not seen it is The Devil's Advocate, and they really ought to watch that just one time, just briefly over the weekend or whatever. Because if they don't understand how, their devil that they have in the Bible would work, why you would want the devil to be a lawyer, or why you would want the devil to be the president, or why you would want the devils to sit on the Supreme Court, this movie might explain it to them. And here's the answer, because these people are into everything. They're into everything, every nook and cranny of your life. Once you get rid of, regulations, once you get rid of authority, once you get rid of, independent departments of justice, an independent FBI, an independent CIA, and all of a sudden the CIA can now operate inside the United States. The U.S. military can now operate inside the United States. The FBI, there's no such thing anymore because everything is investigated by special police, secret police, brown shirts. And you know what's really horrible? Only the evildoers in this audience, the people that really want to do this, they know what I'm talking about. They know exactly what I'm talking about. And everybody else, because we're decent and because we just can't imagine things in the United States turning that far away from law and order, that far away from decency and integrity and character, we just can't imagine it. I need you to.